morning, folks. Well, we're back here, day 2 of rejuvenating, revitalising our garden bed here that we left to die. And we've hydrated it, and I spoke about this yesterday, how dry it was, and we added water to it. And I didn't stay here for hours on end after we finished to keep hydrating it, probably another 2 minutes or 3. And I've just given it a light soak now, and I'm just using this little trencher, which I couldn't be bothered going to get a shovel from the other shed, to dig up a little bit and see if it's getting moist underneath there. And you can see it's actually going through it. Now, I don't expect to see worms in here overnight, but I dare say they will start to appear, especially when we put our planting mix on top, because we've got worm castings in there. And more than likely there'll be a little colony of worms in there, some juvenile, some eggs, maybe not so much adults, but definitely eggs in there, which will populate in here, and eventually we'll get the growth back into it. Now, we mentioned how to hydrate the garden bed, and I said we need to soak it really well to get the moisture through right to the bottom, because it's pointless topping it up with another, this much worth of soil and mixtures on top when the ground underneath is super dry. It's not connected to the earth, that's right, so we're not getting the benefits of the earth underneath, but at the same token, in the position where this bed is here, it is only about 10 metres from the Yukis that I still haven't cut down, which we've got to cut down, because they're sucking the earth dry underneath there, and the oils that they put out there causes almost every plant to die or struggle really to be able to grow there. So as far as having this soil connected to the earth, I'm not concerned, because I think, that just looks like a dehydrated worm. No, it's a leaf. Sorry. I just looked at it for a second. I thought it was a worm, like completely dry. So it's not connected to the earth, folks. It's not going to get the benefits of if it was in another place, all the microbes in the soil and connection and moisture. So we've really got to look after it as best we can, being above ground. And a lot of people these days are going into raised beds, and most of them don't have or do have a base underneath them, so they're not really connected. So when it comes to hydrating, it's the hose. There's no two ways about it. And if you want to talk about water crystals and granules and wetting agents and all that stuff, I don't. Because I don't like them, especially those water crystals. Yeah, once upon a time, go back 15 years more, what am I saying, 20 years, we used to sell them. Those little, they almost look like rock salt, smaller than rock salt, and you add water and they swell to 5-10 times their size, and they become like a gel-like substance, and they release moisture back into the surrounding environments. Some might like them, I don't, purely because I don't like anything unnatural in my garden bed. As I don't like anything unnatural in my body, it's the same thing in my garden bed. So no water crystals, no wetting agents, and if you want to do something that's going to hold moisture in it, that's not in contact directly with the sun, it's this stuff here. This is cocoa pith. This is what I use as nature's own way. So old coconut husk, ground down, and you can see it's like a sponge, it's holding moisture. And it works tremendously well when it's not in direct light or direct sunlight. So as long as the sun's not shining directly on it, and you've put it in between your beds, in your soil, I should say, like I'm doing here, now you could put mulch underneath. We had some leftover mulch from the previous layer. You can see it started to break down, and now I'm just going to top it up with this cocoa. So this is my moisture absorption, not barrier, or layer. So the cocoa does that. It'll connect the soil below to the soil above, be it all compost, and it will help it absorb the moisture. You can, if you like, mix it through so it's actually blended into the compost or the soil that you've got underneath, or you can just simply spread it over the top as a layer in between. I've done it both ways. I haven't had any problems doing it this way. And in fact, I've grown directly in it and covered it over the top as well with compost, because it's no good in direct sunlight. The one thing I found about the cocoa, it dehydrates really quick, it releases its moisture really quick when it's in direct sunlight. So if you cover it over, it will always hold its moisture. So you've got this moisture, a level of moisture in between your compost. So, and eventually your compost and the microbes and the composting bacteria and creatures will start to work through above and below this layer of cocoa, and you'll find the soil will all start to blend through and the compost will blend through. So even if you don't mix it, over time, it will get mixed on its own naturally. So that's our layer of cocoa. I can put more on it, but I think that's enough. And then what you can do on top of that, and this is what I've done in these beds in the past, is put your compost on top. And I'm going to just work out, that's not compost, this is compost. Yep, just crack the bag open. So now I'm going to put my compost on top. Now this has been in the sun. I left it out there for too long the last couple of weeks, not even a couple of weeks, and it's dried out a little bit. So keep that aside there. So this now needs to be hydrated, because it has dehydrated. Still a beautiful blend of compost, meaning how it's been made, but it needs to be soaked. I hydrated the first couple of bags I put in there because it was a bit dry. Now I'm just going to add more and more on top. Is this compost? Yeah, it should be. Yeah. I'm going to try and fill it up as high as I can. I want to get it up to the top, but I understand, like anybody else is doing this. Well, first, you wouldn't let it sink so low by letting it dehydrate so much. And secondly, it wouldn't be so low, so you won't have to use as many bags. So I've put 2, 3, one more now, 4th bag. A little bit more water afterwards as well. I've got my multitasker there doing 2 things at once, pointing and watering at the same time, so don't mind the shaky jakey if the camera's walking around everywhere, wobbling I should say. Now what I'm doing here with my operator is hydrating and blending it through to get the moisture in there. It's going to turn into a little bit of a slurry to start with, but afterwards, once it settles down and it gets absorbed through all the little minute grains and particles of the compost, it'll be fine. So folks, this is a lesson, all right? This is a lesson for everybody. Give me this hose for a second. Let me show you something. Because I've looked around my garden at the moment, and you know, I thought I've just finished watering garden beds yesterday and trees, gone out today and they're still showing wilt. Wilt in the sense they're dehydrated, even though I went there and watered them. And we're going to do a segment on it. Even pot plants and even the grow bags, they dehydrated for such a long period, and I'm not talking weeks on end, just days, that they've actually compacted to the point where it becomes hydrophobic. So just come over here and have a look at this here. See this area here? So that's the soil, the compost. Now, mind you, we've hydrated underneath there. I'm just going to put water on top, and we've done this before. See the pooling? Now, let's just watch this in real time. It's going to be tedious, I know. We don't know how long this is going to take to soak through, but just give it a second to soak. Let that water disappear, because that's telling you that you've got the surface tension is really high, so there is no way that the water is going to penetrate immediately unless you let it sit there for minutes on end, and sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 applications to get it deep down below. So it's disappearing here at the moment. Look at this little corner here. Look at that. Just a little pool of water, unable to crack through the surface of the compost. It will eventually, but not with one application. So if you're watering your garden and you've got a little bit of mulch on top and you haven't watered for a long period of time, it will be dehydrated underneath, especially if we've had hot weather as we've experienced recently. And it doesn't matter where you live in the world, hot weather's hot weather. And good quality compost, good planting mix, whatever medium soil you have in the ground, if it dehydrates to that point, it all goes to shit. It does, simple. So don't leave your bags out in the sun, and make sure they're fresh. Look, it's just going out. Look at that, it's just cracked through, disappearing. Now, as soon as we see that last pool here, see that little bit of pooling there? Wait for that to go. Well, we'll just start here. Let's scratch over here and see what's going on underneath. Dry. It's moist underneath because we had already hydrated the compost underneath that. And this layer that we just put on top, it's not too bad now. See, it's still a bit dry. See how we've got little parts there where pockets that are completely dry and other areas where it's still holding moisture. But see, that's forming. That's what you want to see. You don't want it to be like a sponge where it just becomes really soggy, but you want it to be able to retain its moisture. Now that's wet, but it's not hydrated right through, if that makes any sense. It's spongy wet, so surface tension's been broken, but it hasn't gone right through each little grain there. It needs to go through and become a fully pledged compost / humus medium for you to grow your bloody plants in them. A little bit more, and then we top it up with the magic stuff.